So welcome to another edition of the BTCC Roundup Show. I'm really pleased to have current championship leader and probably the fans' favourite to win the British Touring Car Championship this weekend, Ash Sutton. Ash, how are you doing?
Yeah, all good, all good. The nerves are slowly building up, so no, it's good. I'm all good.
No, it's good. I mean, is that even though you obviously you've won it before in different cars, then and different teams, is it still the same sort of nerves that get to you before every race weekend, especially such an important one as this?
Different kind of nerves, I'd say, if I'm honest. It's obviously I've been in this scenario a couple of times now, but this time it feels a little bit different. Obviously, front wheel drive. I feel like I've got my own goal that I want to achieve, so I'm almost adding more pressure to myself in some weird way. But yeah, no, I'm pretty relaxed at the minute. The nerves do build up every now and again. I just know full well Saturday night I'm not going to be sleeping a wink, so it's that's standard for me.
You're not going out partying then?
No, I wish that was the reason why I wasn't sleeping. Maybe Sunday night, depending on how it goes. I'll either be drowning my sorrows or celebrating.
I think I've seen you pictures in a Grid Girls outfit. Is that a good one?
I was hoping you weren't going to bring that up. that was a heavy, shall we say, heavy night. It was a heavy night, but with JP involved, I think is the right word.
Exactly. I was about to say, actually, I saw Jason with the same or the other girl's outfit anyway. The other grid person's outfit. So yeah, no, interesting times. So I mean, going into a weekend like this, you've had a great year, but it's been a sort of a slow burner, hasn't it? I mean, quite an interesting part of this year, I think. The top four have also got sort of, it's like a two-man team, if you like, not just with the drivers, because obviously you've got Dan, who we've interviewed as well, and he was really complimentary about your talents behind the wheel. And again, as a teammate, you never really know how good another driver is until you're really sitting alongside him in the garage, really, do you? But then he was, full of praise for your talents. And I'm sure that, and as he's sort of learnt the car coming on as well, he's been able to really back you up. But it's been a slow burner, hasn't it? Because at the start of the year, you were slightly under the radar.
Yeah, we obviously the whole hybrid era, shall we say, maybe changed out the way the focus handled. We kind of had to go back to the drawing board quite quickly with what we thought would work suddenly didn't. So obviously it was a big learning curve for myself and my engineer. We've both been rear-wheel drive for X amount of years now. So it was a new scenery in that respect. We needed to kind of relearn a few things because despite how clever Antonio is, some bits didn't relay. What we've used and learned in rear-wheel drive, they didn't roll over into a front-wheel drive car. So we did have to go back to the drawing board a little bit, and we both had to learn and rework with each other. And I think that was an element of our slow progress at the very beginning. But at the same time, I think that we realised very quickly that the car wasn't quite capable of being at the front of the grid. So we didn't want to make those big changes during shall we say, the first half of the season. We had to wait for that summer break, and that gave us the opportunity to sort of dive into what we really thought was the issue and try and resolve it. Because if you make that big change between a meeting, you turn up at the next meeting and it's not right, you could actually end up losing more points than you want. So we played the consistency game, sort of run under the radar a little bit. But yeah, it was that season, sort of mid-season test was the real turning point.
Yeah, that's quite interesting because that's your experience showing really, and Tony's, your engineer Tony Caruso, which is another point I wanted to bring up as well. But it shows your experience, because if you didn't have that experience, you probably jump at the next setup change and really try and jump forward. But actually, that shows that you thought about it. But it's like we're sort of downplaying the start of the season, but you managed to stack up a load of points really when you think about it. And this year has been a very high scoring year as well.
Yeah, without those points, we wouldn't be where we are now. And if I look back now, didn't score a race win until obviously until the second half of the season. So it just showed that we were scoring those consistent points. We were having the run of podiums as well, which was really crucial. There was a couple of factors that played a big part as to why we're in the position we're in now. And who knows? We could have put a setup on the car between a race, and it could have come out the blocks absolutely fine. But it wasn't a risk that any of us wanted to take. We were making changes, but not the big changes, not going completely out of comfort zone. And that ultimately that's paid dividends in terms of where we are now.
One thing I think is interesting with Ash is, you've obviously switched to a new team this season. So people always say it'll take a driver time to get used to new surroundings. Dan's probably a good example of that. He said it's taken him a bit of time to get used to working with a new engineer and things like that. You're a little bit different because, you might have gone from BMR to Laser Tools and then from Laser Tools onto Motorbase. And while it's a different team name, your actual team around you has stayed quite similar. You've taken your engineers and that kind of thing with you. I mean, how key has that been for you, being able to hit the ground running when you have switched from one team to another?
I think that's a huge part of why we're in the position we're in. Obviously, I've brought over my engineer, Antonio Carosa. I brought over my number one, Brenton Yule, and our data engineer, Tom Powell. It's a massive family in terms of the group that I work with. I've worked with them for many, many years, and wherever we've gone, we've picked a package up and worked with it and managed to get it successful. So it was quite crucial for me we're making that decision to come to Motorbase that those guys come with me. It wasn't the easiest call because for a driver to essentially turn up to a team and go, I've got to bring 3 employees that are full time with me, that's quite a big ask. So hats off to Motorbase, Pete Osborne for obviously taking that leap into the unknown. But ultimately, I think they're reaping massive benefits of our knowledge and success over the years, that what they're capable of doing in terms of building a car from the hybrid era of learning the ins and outs of that. There's so many things that have been brought to it, and they've obviously helped us as well in the respect of their previous knowledges. So I think the Motorbase family is just growing much stronger, and it's fantastic that we're all now sharing that data between 4 drivers, 4 very good engineers, data engineers. There's a lot of great guys there now.
So then looking at that, that's actually quite a big deal because you've got 4 guys. You've got yourself, you've got Jake Hill, you've got Tom Ingram, you've got Colin Turkington, and they've all got very strong relationships with their individual engineers. Now, that probably says something, really, especially with a big technical change with hybrid coming in, which was a big technical change, not just on sort of the technical car build side, but also how to get the best out of the car. And I think that's quite a big, that says something about the series, really, that it's very much a driver and an engineer series as much as anything else.
I think so. I think, like you touched on earlier when you said about Dan having to learn his engineer, you can waste half a season doing that quite easily. So when you want to come out the blocks and prove a point, you need that working relationship with the guys around you. It's not so much a trust. I think you believe in what the team put in front of you, but it's the understanding the language that we use between each other. There's some things that me and Tony, shall we say, waffle on about, and other people look at us and stand and go, what the hell were you two on about? But it's just a little bit of a language that we've generated over the years, and he fully understands when I mention a particular word. He knows exactly what I'm after in the car, and it's just that is relearning that does take time, and that's why drivers sign up sometimes for a couple of years, because you have to spend the first year getting yourself comfortable with everyone understanding the situation, then you can really dig deep. But because we brought the guys with us, we've been able to hit the ground running from the get-go.
Well, I caught a word with Antonio, your engineer at Snetterton, and I just said to him, what a great job that you guys have done this year, really, just to jump in a new car and get going. But he said an interesting thing. He said, which is a big compliment to you, really. He said, yes, I know what you mean, but the problem is the setup that I put on Ash's car, the others sort of struggle to run with. And that wasn't far off of me watching you go round Knock Hill at some incredible angles that I've never ever seen a touring car come back from, to be honest, and still doing incredibly fast lap times with a thing at 45 degrees at most of the time. But that shows you really do get it by the scruff of the neck. I mean, and also another thing, because we spoke at the end of last year, and we talked about how your mindset had maybe slightly changed. But maybe that's because you were in such a good place with the car and yourself and the team, and you were really, you had that sort of in advantage. Whereas now you've had to maybe go, right, we're on a back foot here a little bit. And maybe the old Ash Suttons appeared again, a little bit of pushing and shoving, and you know, a little bit of last minute dives, which actually is, I find really entertaining. So don't worry, I love it. But that shows you can switch it on and off, because sometimes drivers can get into the sort of chilled out entertainer mode and then can't get out of it. So it means that you've got that other sort of weapon to use again in this battle coming up this weekend.
Yeah, 100%. I think at the very beginning of the season, we very quickly understand that what I wanted from a front wheel drive car was slightly different to others in the team. They weren't far behind, but I just always went that one step further that maybe others didn't find in their comfort zone. So I think that's maybe why we progressed on a little bit quicker. Like you said, not killed. The thing I was looking at the passenger window more than I was at the front window. But yeah, we've had to dial some of that back, or actually implement some more of that moving forward. But like you said, when it's not been quite right, I have to grab it by the scruff of the neck and dig deep. And every now and again, the elbows have had to come out because we've not had the car underneath us. We can openly admit that. And I'm potentially about to go backwards. So you have to be a bit forceful and get their defending elbows out and not let many people by. So yeah, switching that on and off has been quite key this year. I think that's key for any championship year, in my opinion. You've got to know when to dig deep and know when to sort of accept that your battle's lost. But yeah, I think we've just chipped away at many aspects of the car, of me, of the engineering side of things. We've developed everything, and I think ultimately I'm a much stronger driver now than I was 12 months ago.
You do quite a unique way of setting the car up compared to a lot of other drivers. I mean, the Infinity in particular, last year, you'd watch a lot of cars on track and they seemed to be very planted, whereas, you know, the Infinity was moving around a lot more, it was rolling around a lot more. And your setup seems to be something that would work for you, but, you know, like Shaun says, if you were to bolt it on Dan's car, for example, you know, he wouldn't find it so easy to deal with.
Yeah, I think there's different ways of skinning a cat, I think is the right way of looking at it. That some guys like a slightly stiffer platform, or like a softer platform. Ultimately, you're always going to get to the same goal. It's just what you're kind of tweaking and dialing the car in to suit the driver's needs. And some drivers like oversteering front wheel drive cars, like Tom Ingram's one of those. We can sit and look back at many laps of his that he's had a car very oversteering. Where Dan, my teammate, maybe not so much, but they achieve it in a different manner. We do it with certain items of the setup, and they do it with others. So we get very similar to our end goal, but we maybe go down a different path to achieve that.
So then, coming to this weekend, do you reckon that sort of the softer, you know, if we're coming to the end of the year, we're into October now. There's a chance of rain on Sunday. When I last looked at the weather, at this time of year, it's changeable. But you know, having a slightly softer car, is that an advantage when you come to changeable conditions?
I'd love to know. Obviously, the front wheel drive thing, like obviously we only did brands at the start of the year in the wet, but that wasn't for wet conditions, that's more greasy conditions. So we're actually not done much wet running in this car, or if any at all. So that in the wet is unknown for me with this car. I think in theory, physics and the crunching the numbers behind the scenes, it should work what we've got. But until we actually roll out on a set of wets and we have to put a lap time in, then we won't know, unfortunately. But you look back at the history of the car in the past few years, it's not gone too bad in the wet. So I'm fairly confident with that.
So as well as your big changes, you've got a different team, different car, different engine. But we've also got one change that all the drivers have got, which is the new Cosworth hybrid system that's been out this year. Again, a big step into the unknown for everybody. How's that worked out for you this year? And what are your thoughts on how it's being implemented this year?
I think it's been good. I think for the first year, everyone needs to understand that there's an element of we're all still learning the hybrid stuff and learning where it's powerful, where it's not. And we saw at Silverstone how powerful it actually was. In terms of championship rivals, there was me, Colin, Tom and Jake, but we were actually in the correct order of our hybrid deployment. And we were sort of evenly spaced out as well. There was always 2 or 3 drivers between each of us. So in my eyes, that seemed to work very well there. But maybe at the tracks where it's not so powerful, we need to see a bit more of a deficit, in my opinion. we knew full well that come race day, if you had full ballast on, you kind of had to sacrifice that race. Where now, if you haven't got hybrid deployment, but you've managed to qualify at the front, you can kind of wring its neck and drag 2 good results out of it. So I think when we start bringing in different options and variables, then I think ultimately that's going to be when it really mixes up the hybrid use, and hopefully, fingers crossed, some tyre options and stuff like that. That will really spice things back up, and I think that's what it needs. But I think for the first year of hybrid, Toka have done a great job with how they've rolled it out. They had to play it safe. They had to do the correct way, and now we can start to see it move forward.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll see something maybe like next year where the leader comes into it and he doesn't have any hybrid, same as he has in qualifying, no hybrid. You also in the race, you don't have any laps either.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
That's going to be hard work. You're going to be
that's very hard.
And then, but it's then going to go back to when it used to be sort of 75 kilos, probably. You know, when you're Silverstone, I mean, you were probably there, but I remember Tom Ingram being back in 17th in qualifying when he had 75 kilos. It does really, really hurt you. And I think that needs to come back, because I personally, they're as a team boss, I bet they're spitting feathers sometimes, to get stuff working and to pay the cost of doing it and all that sort of stuff, which I get as being an ex-team boss. But from a spectator point of view, I think it really means that the cream of the crop still come to the fore, as we've seen, I think, this year. And I think if Josh hadn't had the problems that he had mid-season, then he'd have been Josh Cook, that is, up in there. So he'd have had 5 of you in amongst it. But yeah, no, I think it's actually a good first season, as you say. It'd be interesting to see what happens after that. I mean, one thing that I don't know if Matt can answer this, but if you did win it this weekend, again, we don't want to count any chickens because that's never a good thing. Are you the first person to win it in 3 different cars? I don't know if that's a thing, Matt.
No, he's not.
Okay.
There is actually only one other person who's won it in more than 3 cars, and that's Andy Rouse. Because Andy won the title in a Triumph, he won it in an Alfa Romeo, he won it in a Rover, and he won it in a Ford. So Andy's the only person who's won it in more than, I'll say 2 different manufacturers, because, of course, Colin Turkington's 3 titles, he's won it in an S2000 3 Series, he's won it in a 1 Series, he's then won it in a 3 Series. So you could argue 3 cars for Colin, but, of course, they all had a BMW badge on the front. So there's only Andy Rouse who's won it representing 4 different brands. And, of course, if Ash can do it, then he'd move on to 3.
Okay.
Well, that's not a bad club to be in when you're being talked about at the same time as Andy Rouse, because he's a bit of a touring car hero.
Yeah, I'll definitely take that one. He's still got a few more on us, but we'll keep chipping away.
Have you ever met Andy Rouse? Because you're a member of the BRDC. Because did you win? I can't remember what it's called. It's called the Silver Star, where you're the top British national driver.
National driver, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Which is actually a big accolade, because there's a lot of things going on in the UK. It's sort of the home of motorsport, really. So to be winning awards like that is a big feather in your cap.
Yeah, obviously that award was absolutely mega. I'm sort of honoured to get it. It was a bit of a shock when I found out last year. It was a shame we couldn't get it presented at the awards, but obviously COVID and everything sort of canned that. But yeah, going back to your Andy Rouse comment, I haven't actually met Andy, so I'd like to, but yeah, it's just I think for the minute I need to just keep focusing on what we're doing, and hopefully my name can go down that history book as well as his did.
No, good stuff. So, I mean, looking forward to this weekend, I mean, how do you play it? Because you're in the situation which I don't think you haven't been there this year, where you've had no hybrid for qualifying. That's the first time I think you've gone into the meeting in the yeah, that's right. Sometimes I don't always get my facts right, so let's check. But that's quite a big ask, and I think Brands could be a circuit, especially if it's dry, where the hybrid will make a difference, and maybe a similar difference than it made at Silverstone, because you've got there's quite a few slow speed corners with like low speed, but you need the punchy acceleration.
Yeah, we've done some sim work on it and had a little look, and we're actually not noticing too much with hybrid gains. So I'm hoping in that respect that it isn't, and that we're not on the back foot. Like you said, it's our first time going into qualifying with no hybrid, so we just need to fully focus on getting that car dialed in and not relying on hybrid. But realistically, when you look back at somewhere like Silverstone or anywhere where you've had like 1.5 or 3 seconds, it's still not a huge amount. When you actually push the button, it's over very, very quickly, if that makes sense. So I think going in with no hybrid is very, very similar to sort of being in Tom Ingram's position where he's got 3 seconds. Realistically, around here, I don't see it making much of a difference.
Okay, that's interesting.
You touched on sim work there, Ash. I mean, if there's a person on the grid to talk about simulators, you're probably that person. How important is it in preparing for not just a weekend like this, but for any weekend over the course of the season, particularly when you're racing in a championship where you do have restrictions on testing and how much you can get out on track in between race meetings?
Yeah, I'll show you guys now. My sim sat there all ready to go. And before each weekend, I will go and jump on it. And just, it's not so much getting your eye, it's more getting your eye in and just that repetitiveness. Obviously, like you said, we don't always get a chance to go and jump in a car. I know there's a handful of drivers, one of them being myself, that we can go away and do some coaching. So every now and again, you can jump in behind the wheel and you just bring back the natural elements of driving, and they're always sort of current, shall we say. But when you sometimes sit stagnant between each race, you have to kind of spend the first few laps of FP1 getting your eye in and sort of extracting those natural talents back out, because I think on a sim you kind of eliminate that process. It's almost like an FP0. I know people laugh and joke that we've got that kind of with our shakedown at the minute, but I treat my sim like FP1, FP2, and we just try and dial in myself into maximising what I can actually do, and making sure I turn up come FP1 ready to go.
Yeah, interesting as well. Looking at that sim, it looks like you've got yourself set up for oversteer because you've got your side windows already there. You've got like 6 inches away looking outside. I've got one at home and it's sort of much more at 45 degrees, so I'm nowhere near as talented as you. Obviously, you can adjust the side view for how much oversteer you want, maybe. But yeah, no, that's interesting though, isn't it? Because that's been a big deal over lockdown. Sim sales rocketed, I think, didn't it? iRacing had like 1,000% more people on it, who were logging in and going on the system, and it really put it on the map. Have you seen that continue after lockdown, or is that sort of leveled off a little bit now?
Yeah, I think so. I started my sim company, Pure Sims, in middle of 19, so before COVID hit, and it was fine. We did a handful of sims, delivered a handful of sims, installed them for customers, but the moment COVID hit, it was hard. It was tough because the demand went up, like you said. There was such a big demand behind it, but at the same time, trying to get the product and supplying the customer was just as hard. So the lead time suddenly went up because manufacturing warehouses started shutting down and stuff like that. So it wasn't plain sailing, but there was definitely, I think what COVID did for sim racing was put a pin on the map. We now exist as almost a sport now. It is a sport. We're classed as an e-sport. So for someone like myself who's got, we've got a warehouse in Essex that we hold a very, very good stock level of sim stuff to the UK market and to the States. It's a big part now of that pin being on the map allows me, for example, to be able to supply those guys the hardware that they need to build a home sim. And I think it's only going to get bigger. More manufacturers are getting behind that. More parties are getting involved. I think it's just growing and growing, and don't think we've seen the peak of it, in my opinion.
No, I think it's one of those, because karting is so expensive now. Which I know you've jumped back in a kart, and a couple of years ago, didn't you win the something or other world championship of? So there's so many world championships in karting, but I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? There's not many drivers who can jump from something like a big, heavy 1,200 kilo touring car back into a car and still be massively competitive. So, I mean, what's the difference? Because I find karting, a lot of people who can drive like cars, once they go back to karts, once they go back, it's okay. But if they've never driven one before, it's such a different ballgame. They can't get their heads around.
No, it is tough. I'm not going to lie. When we went back in 2019, it was when we went back and did that race in Le Mans. It was the international finals for Miami, but it was in a gearbox car. So I'd never driven a gearbox car in my entire life, and I kind of got signed up. So the main guys in the UK, James Mills, who imports the IME engines, and Nick Jest from the kart manufacturer I use, Xenon. they both kind of come up with a drunken idea of, oh, let's sign Ash up to go and do this. So yeah, before we knew it, we were off doing that. And I can remember getting in it the first time, doing the first couple of sessions, going, what the hell have I signed up for? It is a big culture shock, and especially those things there. Your backside's only like a couple of inches off the ground, and you're sort of touching on 110, 120 mile an hour in one of those at Le Mans. So it's fast for a car, and trying to adjust your brain back to that sort of speed is really, really hard. You've got F1 drivers that use karting in a gearbox car just so it can keep their reaction time up quick enough, because it's the closest thing to an F1 car. So yeah, it was mega. It was mega to go back and do it. It's not always easy, but to go back and win that event that goes on year in, year out, and top drivers turn up, was phenomenal. And it was the perfect way to round off not a great year in touring cars.
So after such a great, well, you're right in the middle of your touring car career, and I'm sure we'll have lots more championship chats over the years as we go on. But where do you see Ash Sutton in 10 years' time? What do you reckon? I mean, really, 10 years' time, how old are you? 28? 28? Yeah. 20, 29? There's no reason why you still won't be driving touring cars, to be honest. So you might have to say 15, 20 years. I mean, are there any other motorsport boxes that you'd like to tick?
In terms of driving, I think obviously I'd like to go down as one of the greats in British touring cars. That's my main goal at the minute. I'd love a stab at V8 supercars. I think that's I had a taste of one of those in 2018, and that was a massive tick box. There's a couple of other things I would like to actually go and have a go in an IndyCar. Something completely different, but that's something in terms of all my driving things I'd like to go and do. But away from driving, would I like to own a team? I would, but I think to try the investment that's comes behind it is very, very hard. I'd like to help, if I can, young talent coming through that haven't maybe got the financial backing, and in when I'm say 40, 45, something like that, I can now watch and help support young drivers coming up through the rankings. So there's a few little things I want to achieve. It just depends where my life and career takes me on the journey to that.
I've got to say, I think you on a road course in NASCAR would be quite spectacular. So I'd have thought maybe the Napa link might open a few doors. To be honest with you, they're dragging people in to do road courses because the Americans struggle a bit if it starts turning right as well as left. That's what I get slated now by all the Americans who listen to this. Luckily, hopefully not too many do, so that's all right. But I think that's why not? I mean, it would be worth flying you over there, sticking you out at Watkins Glen, and see what happens. Because I think that you take to that like a duck to water. Yeah,
don't get me wrong. It's got 4 wheels and a steering wheel and 3 pedals. Off you go. I'll sign up to anything that's got that. So it's I could see myself having a stab at one of those. That whether it would be a full-time thing, I don't know. But the road course in a NASCAR does look exciting. That's for sure.
No, it's good fun. Good fun. Well, thanks very much for joining us. I know you're busy. You've probably got some more sims to build and get them sent out to everybody. We've got an exciting weekend to come. Good luck, because but you always find that the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I know you and Tony have been working hard, and the team on making this weekend a success. So good luck. Let's see how we go to the weekend. Thanks very much, Ash.
Cheers, Shaun. Thank you.